Hi there, my name is Ron Rogers, and this presentation is entitled Aircraft Seizure Made Easy. Well, you're probably thinking, I was involved in things like aircraft repo. Well, actually, this wasn't as such, but at a later time, this is very early in my my pilot career when this occurred, but early in my airline career when I was a very junior pilot, and of course, extra financial things were, enticing, and I had a very senior captain who was involved in aircraft repossession, wanted to get me involved. Okay, I thought he was talking more about ferry flights, not actual repossession. And so it sounded good to me. And then he calls me up and says, okay, what we'd like you to do is we want you to go to this airfield, and it's best if you do it after dark, at night. Late at night is good. And you'll need to break into the aircraft. And I go, what? It doesn't sound like a ferry flight. And he goes, no, I need you to break in the aircraft and not steal it, but I need you to fly it to this other location where we will repossess it. That was a thing he had. And I go, well, what's the maintenance status on this aircraft? And he says, I really don't know. It's been sitting there for a while. And I'm going, oh, this doesn't sound very good at all. And I decided, no. I've actually never even watched this show, but I hear it can be quite interesting. But I decided, nah, that was something I didn't want to do. But back in the very early 70s, I was involved in skydiving. I couldn't afford to fly, but I could afford to skydive. Actually, at the time, it was relatively inexpensive. And I learned to skydive. That's me, very young guy there, over there. Yeah, I got the point right this time. That's me, very young guy, learning to skydive. And there were just a lot of fun people involved in it. But the club I was in, that's me also. Okay, the club I was involved in folded very suddenly, and I didn't want to stop. I wanted to keep on going. So I thought, well, I'll form my own club. How hard can that be, right? Yeah, right. Well, I arranged to get a farmer that would allow us to use his field as a drop zone and a runway. That was kind of cool. And I found a couple of people who would act as jump masters, and I was working on getting an airplane. The airplane, of course, was the hardest thing because who is going to let you use out of a farmer's field, fly in and out of there with their airplane, hauling jumpers, which is not good on an airplane. Full power up, idle power coming down. Who's crazy enough to do that? Well, I did find a guy who was crazy enough eventually, but let me first talk about the two jump masters. Now, the first guy I was dealing with was a fairly normal guy. I'm not going to give you his name to protect his innocence there, but he was a fairly good normal guy. This is a picture that actually appeared in the Daily Iowan, the student newspaper, about our jump club, and he's helped training a young lady. We actually had quite a few young women in the operation. In fact, we there's some interesting stories on that I have in some other videos, but. He was a fairly normal guy, and also he had been in the Army, and he was a licensed and current parachute rigger. So having your own rigger in the club and repacker was a great deal. But we had another guy, and I'll call him Charlie Fryer. Okay, that's not his really name. It's his correct first name, but Charlie was an interesting guy. Now, I never worried about height too much, and I had somebody say, well, of course you don't worry about height, you're 6'1". But other people who are shorter of stature, I guess, can consider it more of an issue. And Charlie had quite an issue with it, and he tried to convey a very macho attitude. These are not real pictures of him or his wife, but it's just for discussion. But he had to portray this macho thing. So he was big in karate, and every time I'd go over there, he was breaking boards, with his bare hand and stuff like that. And he'd have me hold the board so he could like that. Okay, really cool. And his wife was a good head taller than he was, and very nice, but he treated her very poorly, and I heard later they got divorced, and I can't blame him. It was embarrassing over there the way he was being Mr. Cool Macho Man, but not nice at all, especially for somebody who was newly married. Not a good example, but he was a bit of an individual. Well, he helped me. We're getting set up with this. I've got the field, the farmer, is letting us use the field. I got him and the other guy that I won't mention his name to be instructors so we can start training people, which will be a source of funds. But I need an airplane. He says, well, I got this real good friend. Okay, well, this is kind of interesting. I met this guy. He's a little bit of a, I don't want to say sleazebag, but I think sleazebag's a good word. And he had a girlfriend that palled around with him, and he had big plans about how he was going to get an airplane, and he wanted to talk about it. So I went out there to talk to him, and he gave me his address. And I pull up to his trailer. Well, a lot of people put on airs of having money who don't, and you can see the number of Beamers that are parked in front of single wide trailers. Now, maybe these people do have a lot of money and they just don't want to spend it on housing. I have no idea. Okay, but I mean, this wasn't even a double wide. This was a single wide, and it's all the drapes are shut. He's in there smoking, drinking beer, watching the games with his girlfriend there, and he's telling me about how he's going to take care of the club, and he's going to buy a B-24, and we can use it to jump out of. Okay, a B-24. Well, first of all, this farmer's field is not big enough for this guy, and okay, I'm 20. I'm still new at all this stuff, fairly gullible, but even then, I can see that. This just isn't floating. How can you afford a B-24? And even how are we going to even jump out of this thing? Well, later when I was in the Air Force and I was going through the instrument flight pilot center to teach the instrument school, we would get into all these little minutiae about how approaches are certified, aircraft performance, various calculations, high-speed aircraft, stuff like this. But in the back of the room, we had this flagpole. And it had this flag, and what would happen is if we felt the discussion was getting a little too far in the weeds, where we were getting into a big era of bull defecation, one of the students would raise the flag as an indication. Yeah, you've gone a little too far, buddy. We don't buy this stuff. Well, this guy's talking about the B-24. That was definitely this flag was flying high, and I finally just said, man, come on. Yeah, you're living a trailer. You're going to buy a B-24. Yeah, forget it. I mean, you're so full of it, and I walked out. Okay, well, that's not a way to make friends and influence people, of course. But at the same time, I was working for the Johnson County, Iowa Sheriff's Office. Now, this is the courthouse there, and our office was not in the courthouse. It was in a little place behind this, and I went one time to get a picture of it. I didn't have a picture at the time, but I went one time to get a picture, and it's gone. The sheriff's office in the jail is gone. But at a location close by, they have the new, very nice, although I hear that it's gotten old and they want to remodel it because it's been a while, but they have the Johnson County Sheriff and jail was located at the same time. But okay, one of the things we did, as I was a radio operator, and one of the things being a radio operator, deputies, all the people, we needed to be aware of a thing called wants and warrants. This was court-ordered action where they were looking for somebody and they wanted to seize their property for a debt. And of course, we had a very sophisticated cross-reference filing system at the time. Yeah, it was a little box full of 3x5 cards with names on it. And of course, to be familiar with this, I'm going through it and I see this guy's name in there. He has a $5,000 judgment against him and a court order to seize at the earliest opportunity any property he might possess to hold in payment for this debt. Okay, well, that got my attention. That was kind of interesting. Well, I'm down at the Iowa City Airport. I'm an airport bum. I'm kind of hanging around there. I can't afford to fly other than skydive, and so that's why I have more takeoffs than landings. Those will probably never balance out at this point. But and this is a more recent picture because back at the time in the 70s, Cirrus did not even exist, even in anybody's imagination, probably at that point. But I'm out down there and I'm talking to the young lady behind the counter there, and we're having a very nice conversation. And this little 310 pulls in. Okay, that's nice. Well, guess who gets out of the 310? Yeah, Mr. Sleazy Guy and his girlfriend. And he comes in there and, I'm, I'm not holding any grudges over this, but he walks through the main office there, and I say hello, and he turns to me and he calls me a rather nasty name. I guess he didn't like our last encounter, and he didn't use the best language, and it actually kind of embarrassed and shocked the girl behind the counter. So I'm going, can I borrow your phone? And okay, this is a long time ago, but it's not that long time ago. But some of you may think that those are probably closely related because I asked her if I could use the phone, and it was a dial phone, where you could get finger burn from running around the little things there, and we had all these little buttons. You had different lines and stuff. Yeah, this is, cell phones were not even a gleam in anybody's eye probably at that time. So I pick it up, and I call back to work. And I said, hey, yeah, in the card file, you got such and such. They got a warrant for repossessing or securing property that this individual might have for a debt. And this is why, it's aviation, small community. You don't want to really tick people off. It wasn't the first word that came to mind, but you don't want to tick people off, okay? You want to be nice to people, and if he would have just said hello, yeah, maybe I'd let it go or not. I don't know. But probably not even in that. So he probably was in trouble anyway, but I called him up, and I said, hey, this guy, you're looking to see some of his property. Well, he just pulled in here because he had moved out of the local area at the time. Okay, he had moved out of the local area, so it was a little hard for our local, police force to do anything about it in the county. But I called him up and I said, "Hey, you got a chance to seize this guy's property?" And I told him he just flew in a 310, and they said, "Well, what can we do about a 310? How can we seize that?" And I said, "Well, you guys got a Denver boot there, right?" And no, not that thing. This thing. This is a Denver boot for those of you who aren't familiar with it. If you have too many parking tickets or infractions, or they want to seize your property, they put this little thing on your car. And although in a very few cases people have actually tried to drive with this device on or cut it away, even that takes some effort. Yeah, this pretty much makes your device inoperative. Now, I later in some reading came across that to disable an airplane actually is a federal offense. Okay, but you got to remember, this is Iowa. Okay. Federal offense. When you go to Iowa, you take your watch and you have to do this adjustment on it. You have to set it back 20 years. Okay, so we're probably talking back in the 1950s where they didn't even less worried about the federales back then. So I said, what you do, I said, is take the boot and okay, you'll probably notice that this is not the best artistic rendition here of a boot on the nose wheel of the aircraft. I don't have that great capability, so I'm not fooling anybody. That yellow circle is supposed to be the Denver boot there. And I said, just take the Denver boot, clamp it to the nose gear of the aircraft. And they did. And of course, I had to get to class or something, so I left. I didn't even see them put it on. But they came out, they put it on the aircraft, and that airplane stayed there for quite a few weeks. He never got back to wherever he was living at the time. And so it probably caused him a little grief. So that's why you don't want to tick people off. But that is my one and only adventure in aircraft seizure. I thought you might enjoy that story. Thanks for watching.